You're listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, a podcast where we explore what it's like getting older, the peaks, the valleys, and everything in between. In this season of Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, we're covering topics related to vibrant aging. I'm your host, Cheryl Proska. Let's grow old together. On today's episode, I'm joined again by Clémence Scouten, who is a family history specialist. Clémence began working on custom family projects in 2010 while employed as a philanthropic advisor to a wealthy couple in Boston. By 2016, she had moved back to her hometown of Philadelphia and founded Memoirs and More. Clémence's prior experience working with C-suite leaders and her years climbing the corporate ladder in marketing and communications taught her what she needed to know to launch and market a small business. Her success with Memoirs and More clients says as much about her clients as it does her. They bond over their mutual appreciation, and she is lucky to count many of her past clients as friends. Previously, you joined me on the podcast to discuss legacy projects. So if that's a topic you're interested in for our listeners, I invite you to give that episode a listen. And I want to welcome you back and thank you for being here again. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. I haven't given this talk in a while, and so it was exciting to think about it again. Thank you for having me.
And so today we are going to be diving into genealogy, which is a hot topic. We see it all over the place. And so our listeners know this episode is going to be a bit more instructional than usual in that you're going to share a process that our listeners can use to embark on their own genealogy projects. As such, listeners, if you want to take notes, feel free to tap pause and gather your note-taking material. So while anyone's doing that, and before we dive into genealogy, Clémence, can you introduce yourself again for any listeners who might have missed your last episode about leaving a legacy? And I'd love to hear how you got interested in genealogy.
Well, so I got into the bookmaking, the custom bookmaking industry because I worked with a gentleman who wanted to publish some books, write his own books and publish them. And I don't mean publish them on Amazon. I mean privately publish them just for his kids and his family, his extended family. And after doing that with him, it was a ton of fun. I decided it could be its own business. I happened to work with him for other stuff. And then I was like, well, wait, I can do this for more people. And these are all the books I've done. For the listeners, you can't see them, but you can make, when it's a custom book, you do whatever you want, which is also really cool. And so a lot of the books I do are family history books, and therefore they contain a family tree. And oftentimes this means that people, if a client is actually going to sit down and take the time to create this family history book, this is also the time that you're going to fill in the gaps in your family tree. And the what's really amazing about how the genealogy industry has evolved is that the internet and the Mormons have changed the genealogy industry landscape, right? You can now search for stuff on the internet. You couldn't do that before. You had to write to the county courthouse and, ask them to copy something for you. And then they would write you back with the information and tell you need to send them a check for $1.50. And then you would send them the check. And it was not fast. So, and then, the Church of the Latter-day Saints, they're behind Ancestry. They're behind FamilySearch.org. They're the ones who host this humongous genealogy conference every year in Utah. And they're the ones who have really been the backbone of this kind of, or this anchor in this field of genealogy research. And so it's been terrific. It's really made it open to a lot of people. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But so that's what's going on in the world of genealogy, and everybody knows about Ancestry, and we'll talk about them. There are others, and And so, as usual, I've forgotten what your original question was. But so that's why I got into genealogy, is because when client says, well, let's look up grandma, whatever, we never knew where she was from. Well, there's probably now data available that didn't used to be because of all this research being done by so many people, and it's available much more readily. So
it's certainly more accessible, and which makes it the perfect time to get into diving more into our topics of conversation. And thank you so much for sharing all that about your history and how you got into genealogy.
sure.
So, what should we know before starting a genealogy project?
Okay, so there are two things before you even think about where am I going to start or what do I care about. Like, there are two things. One of them is illustrated marvelously. I don't know if I'll put it in front of the camera and I'll read it out loud to one of my very first clients, a wonderful woman who I'm friends with now. Gave me this little dish to keep your paper clips. It says, if you don't want to find the nuts in your family, don't shake the tree. Okay, so I think everybody knows what I mean by that, but let's just stop for a second and ponder it more deeply. You are going to find out things doing research. You may find out things doing research that you did not know. And most often people get really excited about that because it's things like, oh my gosh, I found the ship manifest for my immigrant ancestor. That's so cool. They sailed to America from Liverpool, and before that they were in wherever. So that's really great information, right? We really love finding stuff like that. What happens if you find documentation that your grandmother, your great-grandmother, or whoever, whether they were their immigrant ancestor or not, was institutionalized in a mental institution? Is that stuff you want to know about? What if they were in prison?
Hmm.
Would you prefer to know that or not to know that? Some people are like, it's fine, they've been dead for 150 years, who cares? There was always this rumor, and now we know the rumor may be true, and so they're happy about it. Other people are like, oh, hang on a second. I don't want to know that my great-grandfather was imprisoned for murdering someone, right?
Mhm.
So you do have, because once you know something, you cannot unknow it. So that's the kind of stuff you have to be careful with. Cousins who married. Happens all the time.
Mhm.
You don't want to find out that your family has cousins who have married, first cousins who have married. Don't do genealogy. Genealogy is not for you. If you don't want to find out that there have been illegitimate children in your family, turn off the computer. This is not for you. It is super common to find out things like this. So yeah,
And
that's
I shared with you that my family did genealogy, and we found out that my grandmother, who I'm close with, we found out her father had been married 2 times before and had a whole other family that he had never mentioned. He took it to the grave. So yes, please, I am just backing you up here with, you have to be ready to learn things that may change the way you look at your history, and some people who you like may have or may be close with.
Yeah. And I don't want to get too off topic, but other family members may or may not agree with you. So let's say you're someone who feels pretty casual about it, like, yeah, who cares? You know what? Mores were different then, cousins who marry, whatever, or like big gap in age or illegitimate children. Like, I'm just not fussy about that, you say to yourself. Maybe your sister is, maybe your mom is, or your dad, right? So it's kind of a big question that most people don't think about. Oh, and of course, once you put your information out there, are you prepared to have a phone call from someone who might be related to you? And so that is my second point, which is privacy. The the various websites that you may be interested in using have, I'm assuming this is a do-it-yourself crowd. I should also say, if you don't want to do it yourself, hire a genealogist, right? Then your privacy is very secure because there's only one person working on it, and you can control that very closely. But if you're going to do it yourself, I would strongly suggest you think about what you want the privacy settings to be on the websites you use. The free sites, you don't have that much control, right? Because they're kind of like, that's the trade-off. But a site like ancestry.com has a privacy page, and there's a number of different settings. One is no privacy at all. You put your information out there, anyone can look at it, but it goes all the way, or all the way to complete privacy, in the sense that even though not privacy to Ancestry, but privacy to other users. So if I put my info in there and made it private, and not only made it private as in you can't see, my username is scrambled, but you can't see any of my information in your search results, Cheryl. So let's say you're searching for someone whose last name is Scouten, my information would not come up. So anyway, we don't have to get into it. It's kind of boring, but something for you to think about, right? For this same issue, like, you don't want someone who's potentially related to you to call you out of the blue and say, hi, I'm cousin Jimmy, whatever. Make sure your privacy settings are up to snuff. Okay.
And in so many words, you get what you pay for. So if you're okay with putting your information out there, you're okay with the free site, go for it.
Yeah.
If you want that extra layer, you have to have the paid subscription. If you want like the pinnacle of privacy, hire a genealogist. Or if that's something that you hold very close, maybe this is not something that you want to be embarking on at all.
That's right. There's a whole range, So, and again, I wish I could tell you the answer. It's very personal questions, personal decisions, I should say.
Absolutely.
All right.
So, yeah, now we know what we need to know before we start. Now let's get into the people that are still listening, they do want to start on a genealogy project.
Yeah.
How do they go about doing so?
Well, again, assuming you're not going to hire a genealogist, so you're going to turn to the website and to the internet. And there's what I call the big four, right? So everybody's heard about ancestry.com. And ancestry.com is really is the elephant of the group. And just real quick, I find this fascinating. First of all, they're owned by private equity. It's not a publicly traded company, which I don't know. Maybe some people care or don't care. I think it's kind of interesting to know. They have over $1 billion in revenue every year. So this is big business. Okay. And that's what I meant by it's really changed than the way it used to be. They have something like 60 billion, again with a B, 60 billion records worldwide of things to research. And next year they're going to have more. And the year after that, they're going to have more, right? And this is true for all the other websites as well. And what's so interesting about genealogy research today is that you can search for something today and not find anything, and then go back in a year and you're going to find stuff. So just something to keep in mind. So anyway, Ancestry is huge. Paying site, you can't really do much without a paid subscription. You can have I think it's a 1 or 2 free week window when you first sign up. And then it's either a monthly or an annual subscription. If you're very motivated, you can get a monthly subscription, do your research, and then shut it down. They won't delete your information. So if you build a tree and you don't renew your subscription, that does not get eliminated. It stays there. Although it's not a data repository, I wouldn't put stuff up there and save and think it's going to be there forever. I mean, they don't commit to that. It's not a storage site. But anyway, so Ancestry.com also, by the way, owns newspapers.com, which is a hugely helpful tool for doing research. Not just, it doesn't sound necessarily like genealogy straight up, but obviously obituaries, birth announcements, stuff like that are very helpful. And not for nothing, if you're in a family that had a little bit of money back in the day, there's going to be social columns, right? Marriages, and also before Facebook, people still cared about what others were up to. So you'll read, like in the Philadelphia Inquirer from 30, well, this family was off to, Maine for the holidays, and they'll be back on the 23rd. And, it's so you can still get a lot of information from newspapers. It's really cool.
I knew about the marriage announcements, but I didn't know about the vacation announcements. So that's very interesting for me to hear about.
Yeah, one of my clients had me rolling on the floor. She's like, yes, let's tell everybody when we're going to be on vacation in the newspaper so they can come burgle the house.
Yes, exactly.
Or rob the house. Anyway, so Ancestry also owns findagrave.com, which is super useful, and also owns fold3.com. Those are kind of the three big ones they own. They own obviously a ton of other stuff. And by the way, today we're not talking about DNA. I'm not a specialist in DNA, but of course, Ancestry offers DNA testing. So you can build that into your tree. All right. The next big one is called familysearch.org, and Family Search is free, and it's always been free. They always want to be free. I think it's owned by the Church of the Latter-day Saints, who are the ones who fund it, and it's very powerful. It has a ton of records too. You have to set up you have to set up a username and password, but it doesn't function like Ancestry in the sense that you build your own tree, and then all your info is public. You don't have to do any of this. You can do it just for research, right? You just want to look for census records. You just want to look for ship manifests. You can do that at familysearch.org. Again, you have to set up username and password, but that's it. It's great for that. And it's a great place to dip your toe in the water to see if this is just something you want to try without committing to spending money or whatever.
Good point.
So, and they also have the difference here is that, in the belief system here is that they think and it's true, we're all part of one giant tree, right? You and I are related, Cheryl. We don't know how, but we're probably related. We're humans, we all came from the same seed, basically. And so Ancestry's view is they want everybody to build a tree, right? That's their business model. We're going to sign you up. You're going to build your tree. Woohoo. And Family Search is no, we want to have documented how everybody's related to each other. So it's a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next two of the big four are paying sites that function like Ancestry, where you build your own tree. One is called myheritage.com, and the other is called findmypast.com. Findmypast.com, I'm pretty sure, is yes, it represents data for any country that was once part of the British Empire. So, obviously England and Scotland, but also Australia and also India. And also it's a huge, huge data set specific to that footprint. MyHeritage.com has more information about people with Jewish heritage. So for instance, I think I had once looked at records for brisses it was still from the Ottoman Empire. It was the end of the Ottoman Empire. Yeah. So no information. So that's in lieu of a birth record, right? You can't find a birth record for a child back then. But and so for girls, it's too bad. But the little boy is marked as having received this religious ritual, and therefore we have record of that human's presence, right? So and that's kind of my segue into my next point. So those are the big four, but and they have a ton of stuff, but at some point you're going to have to narrow down your search and go into specialized databases. And I'm not going to talk about those in any length because there are so many of them. There are as many of them as there are countries, regions, cities, counties, languages, religions. There's one specific to Italians. There's many specific to Italians, right? There's many specific to the French. There's many specific to the Jewish diaspora. There's just a ton. And what happens when you start going deep is sometimes when people give up because they don't speak Hebrew, they don't speak Italian, So how do you, how can you read the documents? How can you do this research? That's often when people either give up or hire a professional genealogist, right? So yeah, so that's any questions? Is there anything that comes to mind to break up the me speaking nonstop?
Well, one thing that came up for me when you were talking about how ancestry.com owns newspapers.com, I'm curious
Yeah.
how the industry will move with people's digital footprints, because there are people who really put their whole life out there on social media, and I'll just be interested to see how the industry starts pulling that into, like, doing your genealogy work, your ancestry work, or just to learn more about, like, how our children and grandchildren, nieces and nephews will find out about us in the future.
I don't know. I mean, this goes on to sources, which I was just, is maybe what made you think of it. It's very hard to know what what's going to be saved, how it's going to be accessed, how it can be searched. I mean, what's remarkable about the genealogy stuff is that it's been made searchable. Before, if you wanted to like research someone's ship manifest, you didn't just type in your last name and where you came from and approximately what year, and then it does it all for you. You had to go and read every page of one ship's manifest after another. So how
Mhm.
is technology going to keep up with all the stuff we generate today? That's your question, right? I don't know.
I'm just curious, like, what I'm just like, everything you're saying has made me start thinking in that way. And we don't know, but it is a great point to talk about that the databases are searchable. And I remember when I grew up, it was in a time where it was transitioning from a lot of paper research or microfiche research to doing it online. So, like, that's how I suspect the genealogy industry will go, but that's just putting my business hat
Yes,
on.
and it is. I mean, Ancestry and the Family Search.org have poured tremendous amounts of money, and I mean, and they used to. I mean, this could be a whole nother talk. So before AI, um, and maybe so let's call it 15 years ago, and before like Ancestry really started spending money on this, they had a little army of data entry people as volunteers. So I was a volunteer and I would install this thing on my computer, their software, and then it would feed me something, a ship manifest, military document. It would ask me to type in the data from that page, right?
Mm,
That's how they made everything searchable. Now with AI, they have programs that can read handwriting and transcribe handwriting. So
amazing.
it goes straight into a database.
Would you prefer to age independently in your own home or live in a nursing facility? I know what I'd rather do. Friends Life Care membership offers just that. Plan today for a future lived at home with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience while protecting your savings. Learn about your options at a free seminar or webinar. Register at friendslifecare.org/register or call 215-628-8964. Great advice on how to get started. We walked through the big four and some also subsets of websites that could help people dig deeper should they want to. Now, can you share your tips and tricks for how to keep a genealogy project going?
Sure, sure. I will say the industry has made us believe something totally inaccurate, first of all, is that this is a digital only project. You will need paper and pencil. So there's so much that's going to be thrown at you so quickly, so many ship manifests, so many records, so many everything. You are going to need to take notes. I saw this here, I saw this on this date, I saw this on this website. And also, so anyway, so paper and pencil are an absolute must. So that's the first thing. And what I would say with research in general, start small. If you're saying to yourself, I'm going to do on my side, my spouse's side, and then whatever, okay, it's just like, that is way too much. Start with, one of your side, like not just your side, but like your mom's side or your dad's side. Start there. And then if you choose your dad's side, start either with his dad or his mom. Like it's so quickly has so many people added to your research that, you really need to be disciplined about what you're looking for. And once you have your tree populated with lots of people, if you're bored with this side, you can go do research on that side, fine. But to start with a narrow question. I want to find my immigrant ancestor on my father's side, or something like that. And work backwards, right? You're not saying I'm going to take everybody who was on the Mayflower and figure out which one of them I'm related to by tracing their information forward. It doesn't work that way. You have to start by working backwards and verify the data as you go. So before you even start looking up your father, let's just use that as the example, write down what you know about him, his birth date, his birthplace, his names of his siblings, names of his parents, whatever you know, just jot it down. Because what happens is that, as I said, the internet's going to throw so much information at you that after seeing 5 different people with names that are similar on different things with very similar birth years, you're going to start questioning yourself. Wait, do I really know my dad's birth year? Wait. Yeah. So you can check back at your notes where you started, right? And then, so as you gather data, really keep track of those sources. And what's going to happen is you're going to probably end up with multiple browser windows open in your website. I mean, in your browser, because you don't want to lose that particular page. Or another way is like when you find good data, download that ship manifest onto your computer, or download that immigration document or whatever it is. Because if you don't do that, and if you don't say where you found that document, when you need to go back and look it up again, because you often have to go check stuff you already found, you're going to have to search for that document again. So why duplicate your work? Just write it down the first time. I found this document on this website in this data set, right? It doesn't take that long. You don't have to write a bibliography and worry about commas and, formatting. Just keep track of your sources. It will save you so much time and aggravation. And then, this is a pleasure project for most people. So take your time. Oddly, the longer you take, the better success you're going to have, because every day they add more data into the databases. So as I said earlier, you may find somebody next to you you didn't find this year because the data just isn't there yet. So, don't rush, be systematic, make sure the information you're finding is correct, right? So trust, but verify. So if you see a family tree that someone did who's a cousin of yours that and you're like, oh, wait, I don't have to do any of this. My cousin already did this work. But what's the question there? Did your cousin do it right? So you don't know. You want to think they did, but you may need to check it, right? You should certainly look at it to see that it matches what you think. But as soon as you head up into the great grandparent generation, we don't know that stuff by heart most of the time. So did they get the right family member? Are they researching the right branch? Or did they pick, here's an example with Italians. Traditionally, the firstborn son is named after the father's father. The second-born son is named after the mother's father. So if the father happens to have 2 brothers, that means, and they all have sons, that means all 3 of those cousins have the same first name. So, very quickly, it becomes important to make sure you have identified the right person in that data. The name is not enough. the name, the birth information, the parents' names, the siblings. There's a lot of contextual information that helps us make sure that you have found that you're on the right track, right? And what's going to happen is that you're going to find families who have parents who are named Michael and Maria, something or other, right? Michael and Maria, I don't know, Jones. And you're going to find in Philadelphia, there's two families with exactly the same Michael and Maria Jones with similar birth dates, but with different children's names. And so you're going to know, like, okay, I have to be careful. That's that other family, right? And they're not mine. So I need to make sure that their kid, they both had a kid named David. It's not the same David, right? So that's why you can't just see a record and go, oh my gosh, that's the right one. So those are my tips.
And in again, my experience with something that's really standing out to me is your trust but verify is we found out that my grandmother's mom had been lying about her age because she wanted to come across as younger to be at the time to be more able to get married. We always wondered why she only had 2 children. Well, it was because she was older than she ever told anyone, and she just got to an age where she couldn't have any more children. So to anybody who's embarking on this, if you are open to it, I do encourage you to have an open mind and be willing to learn some things about your family that will dispel what maybe you already believe to be true.
It's a great journey if you're into it. It's a great journey if you're into it.
It's a journey.
It's a journey. It's a journey because not for nothing. Even though Ancestry has 60 billion records on there, it's still a tiny footprint of all the records out there. So at some point, you're still going to have to write to your county courthouse and say, can you $50? It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Absolutely. As you may have seen or heard throughout the episode, Clémence was a bit under the weather during our episode today. And so I'm going to let you know if you're interested in learning more about Clémence or Memoirs and More, you can visit LinkedIn or her website, memoirsandmore.com. I do want to thank Clémence for joining me again today for our second episode with her and walking all of you through embarking on your own genealogy project. And thank you for listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, a unique program focused on aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience. You can find links and show notes from this episode on our website at friendslifecare.org/podcast. Again, you can learn more about Clémence and Memoirs and More by visiting memoirsandmore.com, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I will also link the websites that Clémence mentioned throughout today's episode in our show notes. If you like our show, please rate, review, subscribe, and join us next time. To learn more about aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience, subscribe to our blog at friendslifecare.org/blog.